Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast, everyone. My name is Elijah. Today I'm here. It hmm, yeah, it hasn't all been good. I've got some good news, some bad news. Um, I think one piece of good news that I do want to start with is we did hit 300 subscribers on YouTube. So to everyone over there following us and supporting us, we are so grateful. Thank you very much. Um, for for Orioles related news, there's not as much good news. I think the things that I can say are today was an off day. I'm recording on April 10th, and off days mean that you do not play a baseball game, and that implies that the Orioles were not able to lose. So I think that's good news. The Orioles did not lose a baseball game today. Um, Tomorrow all bets are off. But for today, good news. Some actual good news is that despite the things I'm about to tell you, Tyler echoed this in his last episode, or maybe I'm echoing him, but it continues to be April, the very first part of the season. There are a lot of reasons to assume that the Orioles are going to get better as this season progresses. That said, it's it's stressful right now. It's hard out here. Um, since Tyler recorded, we lost two more games in Phoenix, Arizona. The Diamondbacks kind of battled. It was a closer game on, let's see, Tuesday. And then we had a horribly embarrassing 9-0 loss yesterday. Dean Kremer continues to struggle with the command, particularly of his splitter. I'll talk about that a little bit through here. For those on YouTube, you can see I've got him up on the screen. But yeah, I mean, it was just an ugly game. The offense got absolutely nothing going throughout. Um, yeah, Dean looks bad. He has given up a lot of hard contact this year, um, and is really like unable to generate whiffs on the pitches that were reliable for him last year. So, you know, uh, I am going to start with him. I'm going to talk about him and one other guy who's kind of throwing a red flag for me. That would be Heston Kjerstad. Kjerstad has not looked good this year, in the least. And there are a couple underlying things that I think are maybe even, uh, a slight bit more concerning. There has been a reduction in bat speed for a little preview. He's making contact deeper in the zone than he had previously. The swing is shorter. It's not as much time to just generate velocity, generate bat speed. So some concerning signs all around. I don't want this to seem too fatalistic. Once again, the fact of the matter is that Grayson Rodriguez is going to come back at some point. Zach Eflin, he did hit the 15-day IL on Tuesday. It is only a low-grade lat strain. They said they're shutting him down for a week, should be able to bounce back pretty quickly. Uh, I never thought I'd be happy to say this, but Kyle Gibson is going to be here relatively soon. He is, I suppose a good thing right now, like because we are hurting so badly. Um, you have to assume, and this is a good thing, but because literally nobody else on the 40-man roster is a starting pitcher and healthy, that Brandon Young is going to come up and take Zach Eflin's next start. BY has, like over the course of the last year, really stepped forward, came into spring training throwing a couple miles an hour harder, throwing with improved velocity. The stuff looked really good. Folks like Thomas Nestico on Twitter and Blue Sky, he has been talking him up, saying one person, I think it was Baseball Prospectus put up that BY was the 20th best prospect in the Orioles system. Nestico countered, he is closer to the 20th best pitching prospect in baseball than he is to the 20th best in the Orioles system. This is a guy who some people are flagging as having pretty legitimate promise. He's got good command, a wide arsenal, five pitches, and like I said, that fastball has been gaining. So, excited to see what BY can do. I think that's only going to be a good thing. Um, Obviously, it hurts to lose Eflin. You don't want to do it at the expense of him. But there's reason to, just expect that things are going to smooth out. Obviously, the offense is going to come along. Gunnar, like, finally had a couple hits. He is basically in spring training right now due to the lost time. I think that, once again, don't panic, but uh, Yeah, there are a couple concerning signs, I think, particularly with Dean Kremer and Heston Kjerstad that I wanted to talk through today. Um, and yeah, I guess I'll just jump into it. I think the biggest thing about Dean Kremer right now is the splitter. This was a pitch that he used last year. Um, and I, I'm gonna do my best to describe this for the podcast folks, of course, but do have the baseball savant images up in front of me as well. The movement profile on the splitter, I'm looking at 2024, having trouble finding the right zoom setting. Um, I think that the thing to say is last year the splitter was very well tucked, kind of directly beneath the four seam fastball. And what this does is you release them on the same trajectory virtually, and there is a bunch of extra drop because of the low induced vertical break on the splitter. And obviously, Dean actually throws a pretty high IVP, IVB. I'm sorry, induced vertical break. Dean throws a pretty high, like hoppy fastball. It's like above average, certainly. And I think the thing to point out about that is if you're able to tuck the splitter sort of into the tunnel of your primary fastball, that's where it's most successful. To illustrate that concept, I'm going to bring up two other guys here, one of whom is Yoshinobu Yamamoto. This is why the Dodgers are paying him so much money. It looks a little bit better in the 2024 plot, so I'll show it there. But, he throws this splitter and, kills like a good 12 inches of vert, and he only throws it 5 miles an hour slower. So that means you're going to be swinging at the fastball and you'll be getting this thing that comes in 12, 15 inches lower, and you'll swing right over the top of it. To illustrate again, Cal Quantrill, who is on the Marlins and not necessarily a good pitcher overall, but had a wildly effective splitter last year, um, and is continuing to in the early going this year. Quantrill has a similar thing. You can see it very largely tucked below the four seam fastball in terms of the movement profile. Um, and if you go back to Dean and you swap over to this year, he's throwing it about a half mile an hour harder. It doesn't necessarily seem like there was anything too concrete there, but the movement profile has shifted up. So it is getting more ride. It is like having less vertical separation from the four seam fastball. And it's also running a little bit. It's running to his arm side a bit more. And it looks like it's hiding a bit more within the tunnel that the sinker would occupy. It's got a largely pretty similar movement profile. But what really makes a splitter effective is really that deception, right? It's tucking it within this tunnel. And if we go ahead and we look at pitch usage here, right? Dean's cutter and his four seam are the two predominant pitches, and occupy more than 50% of the pitches he throws. He does throw the sinker a good amount, 15%. He throws that splitter an equal amount, at 15%. But I think it's important to note that, the splitter just intuitively to me needs to be playing off of the primary pitch. And the more and more that you get horizontal run on it, the less and less it's going to look like that cutter, the less and less it's going to look like that four seam. Um, and then I think the other thing to really point out about the splitter, well, I guess I'll start over here, and I will point out that the splitter is just getting whacked this year. um, so last year, he was returning a 36% whiff rate on it, with that slightly, again, lower vertical break, less horizontal break. It basically just kind of fell straight down relative to the four seam fastball. He had a 36% whiff rate on it. This year, that is down at 9.5%. It's not even getting the number of whiffs that his four seam fastball gets, that the cutter gets. And the splitter above all else is a whiff inducing pitch. That is what has made it so effective over the years, and what's making it really become, I guess, in vogue again. We go back to last year, we also see, like slugging percentage against it was 248, expected slugging 297. This year, slugging against it is over 1100, almost 1200. 1182 is the exact, and the expected slugging does not paint a prettier picture. It says it's expected to be at 917, which frankly, if anybody put up 917 over a full season, they'd be considered a god. It's obligatory to go ahead and look up Barry Bonds stats right now and see if he even ever accomplished um, a 900 slugging percentage in a year. 863 was the best that Barry Bonds did in that crazy 2001 season where he hit 73 home runs. So hitters against Dean Kremer's splitter are, in terms of power potential, in terms of strictly strictly slugging. The expected slugging is better than prime Barry Bonds, and the actual slugging is like Shohei Ohtani's OPS. So, the pitch is returning horrible results right now, just absolutely dreadful. I think one of the biggest reasons for this, if I can scroll properly, is just the location of these pitches, right? He is leaving the thing over the plate way too much. You can see that. I mean, he is getting it up. About half of these pitches are, I mean, at hitters' belts, frankly. He does hit the low and outside corner every once in a while, but he just cannot keep the pitch down consistently enough to limit hard contact on it. I think another thing to point out here um, is that Dean Kremer actually, if you go ahead and you look at just his total pitches, that I should say Baseball Savant has a couple different if you go to the zones section, you can pull up different plots. In his total pitches, he has middle or just looking at pitches by zone, middle, he has more pitches middle than he does in any other zone in the strike zone. He has thrown more low and inside and high and away, and he's thrown the exact same number of pitches, like at the center of the zone in the lower portion, but he is living in the middle of the zone when he comes into it. And that's frankly really, really dangerous. Um, a little bit like middle away, you could argue is almost as popular. But the other thing about it is the most hitters or the most swings that hitters have taken off of him this year is on middle pitches. Hitters are not necessarily being fooled by things. They are seeing these meatballs and absolutely destroying them. Um, and I guess to like continue to hammer this point home, um, yeah, like uh, some of the most hard hit balls that he's given up have been in the center of the zone. Uh, all of the home runs that he's given up, I shouldn't say all, but the most home runs that he's given up have been in that middle, have been in that middle away. He is just giving up so much loud contact, like at the belt and middle in to righties, middle away to lefties. And we saw this with Corbin Carroll. We saw this with Josh Naylor in this most recent start. you know, Hitters are just not fooled by Dean Kremer right now. Frankly, I think that the changes he has made to the splitter have been uh, uh, awful. He just is not uh, doing what he should be with that pitch, and it's really, really, it's a detriment to him. He does not have any weapons going away. Sorry, away from a lefty into a righty. I'll pull this back up to show the sinker is also getting next to no whiffs. Not that it did so much last year, but last year returning a 354 slugging, 312 woba. This year it's returning a 500 slugging, 496 woba. Just absolutely nothing moving away from a lefty into a righty is effective in any way, shape, or form right now for Dean Kremer. And it's making him a very, very one-dimensional pitcher. He is hammering the cutter. It has not had bad results this year. I wouldn't say it's had extremely good results either, but as a primary pitch, I think it's fine. It's just that he has to have something working to his arm side, and he has to be able to keep the splitter down in the zone. It's just not tenable to have no out pitch to your arm side as the kind of command oriented pitcher that he is. He's not going to outstuff anybody. You have to keep the off speed pitches down out of the zone. And yeah, I mean, if we go ahead, let me do this. And if we just pull up the game feed from yesterday's game, we'll be able to go ahead and see. I mean, Dean Kremer was getting destroyed in the middle of the zone, pulling it up. Stand by. Here we go. So, yeah, he largely, was leaving pitches all over the middle of the zone of every type of pitch. It's really, really like he is frankly not just not executing in any way, shape, or form right now. These kind of dark blue, I'm trying to think of a better color. We'll go aquamarine, something like that. These dark blue guys are the splitter, and you can see them just peppered all over the heart of the zone. It's just not feasible. He can't live there. He doesn't have the stuff to do it. Um, and yeah, frankly, I'm pretty concerned. He needs to make the adjustment back to last year's splitter. He needs to get that vertical break down. He needs to make sure this thing is, falling off the table to an extent, in a way that it was last year and is not doing so this year. So yeah, a little bit concerned about Dean. Uh, I think the thing that I will say is if he wants to lean more heavily on his sinker, I think that's possible. I think then you begin to hide the splitter a little bit again. If you do that same thing, if they have a little bit of the same arm side run, there is a way to re-hide it in its current form. But as long as you're going to keep relying on the four seam and cutter and these pitches that are moving, the four seam is obviously has some arm side run, but you're going to lean on the more vertical and the glove side fastball. As long as you're doing that, you need to have something that tucks within those tunnels better than this new splitter is active or is currently going to do. So I think that's a critical note for Dean. We'll see how it adjusts over his next couple starts. Obviously, the Orioles are down so bad right now in terms of pitching injuries that Dean Kremer is going to continue getting starts. We'll see how it shakes out. I have not been encouraged thus far. Uh, again, that this is a guy. It's on the screen here, but he sits 93 with his four seam. It is not the kind of stuff that can just blow people away. He has to get out of the heart of the zone, and the pitch mix is deep enough to get outs. We've seen it in the past. He certainly can get outs. It's just it is critical on location, and I think once again tucking that splitter back beneath the four seam fastball will pay enormous dividends for him. So the other guy we want to talk about today, we're gonna go with Heston Kjerstad. Heston is, he's fascinating. He's had Man, I I just like scrolled over to his Savant page for those of you listening on podcast form, and his hit spray chart is just so disappointing. There are six balls listed on it. There are five singles and a double, and it's pretty depressing to be frank. But that said, getting over the shock of that, Heston, he has like been a fixture for the Orioles. I get not fixture, a presence for the Orioles for the last 2 years, and still manages to only have, let's see, 178 plate appearances at the major league level, 30 of them coming this year. So coming into this season, he had 147 plate appearances. Sorry, 100. I can't math. 147. That's right. Okay, I'm sorry, 147. So 147 plate appearances at the big league level, and certainly, has shown some good things, has not, I don't think, overwhelmed anyone with his success. But at the same time, it's been promising throughout. He was a bat first prospect the whole way through. Obviously, destroyed the ball the entire way through the minor leagues. Even, given his unique path to the bigs with the myocarditis, with all these injuries. But this year he looks a little different. And I think the simplest thing to say here is going and looking at Baseball Savant's new bat tracking. And, in his first season in 2023, his average bat speed on swing was 72.9 miles an hour. Last year it was 70.9 miles an hour. And this year it is down at 68 miles an hour on his average swing. And, you know, there's a little bit of a small sample size here, but this is also more swings than he had in that first season when we were all so impressed with him. So there is, to an extent, like it's how hard he's swinging the bat. I don't. There could be an injury here, but it's also this is just what he is right now. This is how hard he swings. Um, and I think the other thing to like notice here is with that change in bat speed, um, you know, Savant has this term called blasts. These are um, like effectively a combination of how well you square the ball up, exit velocity, launch angle, all the above. And I mean, the rates at which he is doing this, both in terms of per swing and both in terms of when he makes contact, have gone, down since that rookie season, and substantially so. As a rate of how often he makes contact, only 10.9% of his swings are blasts, or of pitches he makes contact on. That was over 20% in his first season. As a percentage of swings, it was 13.7 in his first season, down to 8.6. So, probably two-thirds of the rate that he was having these blasts on swings, and about half the rate on when he's making contact. So this is all to say he is swinging more slowly, and the rate at which he is turning those swings into efficient contact is going down. Um, and that's scary. As a guy who has so little defensive value, really, really needs to put himself forth as a like impact bat to be a positive contributor in this league. Seeing him kind of just like seemingly losing it is really concerning for me. Another thing that I'll point out is, interestingly enough, his swing length has gotten a bit shorter. Um, this typically makes sense, I guess, in conjunction with, um, the bat speed drop. Typically, guys who have longer swings have a longer time to accelerate the bat head. Giancarlo Stanton is the poster child for this. He has the longest swing in the game and the fastest, because he just like takes 10 minutes putting everything he can into the swing, accelerates the bat through the zone. It moves very fast, but you can miss. Um, and the other side of that is like Luis Arias, who has an incredibly, incredibly short, compact swing and swings with absolutely no bat speed whatsoever. Um, those are opposite ends of the spectrum. Heston Kjerstad is not as bad as Luis Arias, but he, as somebody again who you need to see making hard contact and really impacting the ball, seeing him start to trend toward a shorter swing and less bat speed, I won't go so far as to speak to whether it's timidity or an actual like conscious change in his swing, but I do think that that one of the things that the Orioles do so well is they have guys who hit the ball hard. Gunnar Henderson, one of the fastest swingers in the league. Ryan Mountcastle, one of the fastest swingers in the league. Colton Cowser had good bat speed. This is a thing that we do, and to see Heston Kjerstad going away from this trend to an extent is a little bit odd, a little bit concerning. There is a chance we hear, oh, well, he like bruised his ribs, and that was affecting him through the early part of the season. That could absolutely be true, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But I do think that this is something that stabilizes pretty quickly. And for those looking on here, I can just show like, these are kind of some plots of his bat speed distribution in each season, and you can see, he was very, very solidly above average. Again, like his average swing was 73 miles an hour, 72.9 in his first season, and has gradually gotten slower. Now it is 68. A 5 mile an hour difference is very, very substantial, and league average is, 71-ish, something like that. So it's very, he has kind of regressed to the opposite side of the mean. He is now in the lower portion of bat speed amongst major league hitters, and that's concerning. I'm not entirely sure what to make of it. Another thing I'll talk about with Heston here, excuse me, is that you'll see he is largely, I guess, being worked away. I think that one of the things we can see pretty apparently in like the most pitches that he has seen are outside of the zone, low and away. Pitchers have thrown him 82 pitches, low and away, and he has missed 21 of them. He is willing to swing. He's swung at 40 of these 82 pitches outside the zone, low and away, and he whiffs at a 53% rate. I said 21 out of 40. That should technically be 52. I don't know why that says 53. That's interesting. Um, anyway, so he goes ahead and he gets these awful pitches that he can do absolutely no damage with, low and away, outside of the zone. Again, outside of the zone, and he swings at them all the time. I mean, he is swinging at these pitches, he is making attempts, he is whiffing on over 50% of them, and he's doing no damage. His average launch angle with it is a -9. He's just like beating these things into the ground. Average exit velocity down in that zone, 78 miles an hour, barely like I I can still throw a ball 78 miles an hour. This is soft, soft contact. Um, and it's his, yeah, I mean, in that zone, it's his third most batted balls this year. He is offering at bad pitches. He is not doing anything with them. It's not a situation where he can go ahead and he's just Vlad Guerrero Sr. able to make contact with anything. No, I mean he's taking these awful pitches. He is again beating them into the ground softly. Um, and it's yeah, just wildly concerning to see such a lack of approach and such a lack of quality contact out of him right now. I think that Heston Kjerstad is so critical to this team right now, explicitly because of the injury to Colton Cowser. We did not bring in Ramon Laureano to be an everyday guy. That just is what it is. There's just no world where Ramon Laureano can step into this role and go and hit every day against righties. We need Heston Kjerstad to be a good hitter, to be able to pull the ball in the air. That's another thing I should have pointed out. Dude has just not pulled the ball all year. Um, I was talking to somebody on Blue Sky. I think he has pulled exactly two balls on the season. Or maybe we're up to three now. But yeah, pulling the ball in the air, it's only 9.1% of the contact he makes. Obviously, you do the most damage when you pull the ball in the air. That is like the highest home run per fly ball rates. That is the highest slugging percentages. It is the highest everything is when you pull the ball in the air. I talked a little bit about Colton Cowser shortly after he made his bat change after the All-Star break last year. And at that point, he had pulled four balls in the air, and I think it was like three home runs and a double or something like that. So, it's really a pretty critical thing um, for modern hitters. Nobody like who does damage is a spray hitter. That's just not how it works, right? And there are hitters in this league who, despite subpar bat speed, despite, a worse ability to impact the ball, those people have made livings. Those people being Alex Bregman, Isaac Paredes for the Astros. You know, they have made a living on just being able to pull the ball in the air, and they do it so effectively that they can eventually turn their soft contact into production regardless, because that is the way that you elevate for distance and put the ball out of the park. So yeah, a little bit concerning here from Kjerstad. And I think the fact that, the bat speed is kind of coming with that is also dropping is concerning. And I think another thing to point out here, let's see, I need to go back to this guy. So I think another thing to point out here is that, relative to his center of mass, every year where he is actually making contact with the ball has been getting closer and closer, so to speak. Um, and he is not, he's actually hitting the ball behind the front of the plate, it looks like right now. And part of that is swinging at these outside pitches. Basically, if you think about like the path that a bat would take through the zone, if you're going to hit an inside pitch, you have to get the bat out front. You have to make contact in front of the plate. If you're going to hit an outside pitch, your bat, will be at a bit more of an angle, kind of pushing it out to the opposite field. So, this makes sense to an extent, but he is certainly not really getting the bat head out front. That could also partially be contributing to the shortened swing, to the lower bat speed, all the above. Like I guess the optimal way to make contact is you have time to accelerate the bat, you catch it out front, and you pull the thing up. Um, and it just doesn't seem like he's doing that. He's not making optimal contact. I do think part of it is that pitch selection. He has been, swinging at these outside pitches in just a way that is totally detrimental for him. Excuse me. I will, give him some benefit of a doubt in that like pitchers are actively attacking him there to an extent. If you look within the zone, the three hottest spots, so to speak, for where pitchers are attacking him are middle out, low and away, and low middle. So, this is a concerted effort. Clearly, the league as a whole, it's been consistent throughout the couple games that he's been in. The league as a whole has decided this is an area of weakness for him, and they're attacking him there. So it'll be interesting to see how Kjerstad responds. This is a guy who's somewhat caught between being a young, inexperienced hitter and being someone who has now been a major leaguer for about 3 years now, despite the injuries, despite everything. And obviously, he looked much better before he had the concussion last year. I'm not trying to say this is a dude who, all hope is lost on him or anything like that. Um, but we need him to figure it out. He's one of the critical pieces to this team. I think particularly now that Cowser is down, you need him to step up. You need that bat in the lineup. And you need to be able to rely on him, Cedric, and Tyler O'Neill, holding down the three spots in the outfield day in, day out. Um, so, the, the rest of the Orioles offense is struggling too. I'm not trying to put it all on Heston Kjerstad. He's just seemed to have exceptionally bad at bats to me. Um, so I think that if I were to say where the Orioles finished this year, I still think like last time Tyler brought up again that he had predicted 93 wins. I was the low man on the Orioles. I said 89. I think, I might bring that down to 86 or something like that right now. Because all of these pitching injuries, I think it's going to take a while to ramp up. I I said his name briefly at the beginning, I think, but like I am excited for Kyle Gibson. We need Kyle Gibson now. It like the rotation is in that bad a shape. You built this team clearly around depth, and the only upside that you had in your rotation was Zach Eflin and Grayson Rodriguez, and now both of them are gone. And man, I don't know. Charlie Morton cannot stop giving up home runs. He's striking out a couple guys. That's lovely. Povich has looked okay. Sugano has looked okay, but yeah, I mean the amount of hard contact off of Morton and off of Kremer have been seriously, seriously concerning, I think. I Yeah, we need to start seeing some strides there. The offense has been inconsistent, on the games where they are locked in, um, they dominate. We've scored 8 runs in like 5 games this year or something like that, 8 runs or more. So some good things are happening. We are seeing glimpses of the team that we know this team can be. We have not seen it day in, day out. We do not have consecutive wins yet at any point this year, which is pretty disappointing. Um, but again, it's still early. This is a team that, Gunnar Henderson just came back and just, he's basically like seeing major league pitching for the first time since 3, 4 weeks ago with spring training. So, expect him to be fine. Adley has taken some really, really good at bats. Tyler O'Neill has looked good. Cedric has looked good. There are plenty of reasons to think that this team will be fine. And ultimately, that is what I think. We're going to be in playoff contention. All is not lost. But I do think if we are going to patch it together until the starting rotation's in a better place, um, you need Dean Kremer to step up and you need the offense to really come together as a cohesive unit. Part of that being Heston Kjerstad needs to step up to help round out this lineup. You can't have all the pressure on the same 3, 4 guys every single game. You need guys to step up. You need guys to take that pressure off, to lengthen the lineup, make a pitcher have to battle, against six, seven guys instead of just two or three. So that's all I got today. I think again, the Orioles should be fine. It should be okay. But that doesn't belay the fact that there are some concerning signs. If I had to tell you, which of these I was more concerned about, Dean or Heston, I think it's Dean Kremer, honestly, because he has essentially neutered the one surprising outpitch that he had last year with his splitter. I just don't think it can necessarily work at this profile, and particularly this movement profile, and particularly not at these locations. Um, it's just not yeah, it's just not it. I don't know. So we'll see how it goes. We, you know, again, we had a day off today. We get to come back home. Hopefully the guys got to reset a little bit. Hopefully the fans got to reset a little bit. I know it's been a stressful go. And I am certainly uh not advocating for, anybody to fan in a particular way. If you got to get frustrated, get frustrated. Just take care of yourself. It's a long season, and it can get worse. We can throw it back a couple years and we can see exactly how bad a baseball team can be. We can throw it back to 2018 and see how bad a baseball team, even with good expectations, how bad that can be. Um, so, just marathon, not a sprint. Everyone take care of yourselves. This has been the Warehouse Podcast. My name's Elijah. As always, if you can, subscribe to the podcast, follow us on your preferred streaming platform. You can come check us out on YouTube. I always wave to YouTube. Hi, YouTube. And yeah, I mean, feel free to interact with us wherever you possibly can. We are on Blue Sky mostly nowadays. We are at Gmail, thewarehousepod@gmail.com.